Yo, what's going on, people? Welcome to the Good, the Bad, the Ugly podcast. You guys voted it yesterday or the day before, and you voted for the DPS. So here we are with my little presentation of the DPS, the Directorate of Professional Standards. That's what it stands for. What they actually do, I'll get it from the Met Police's website. The DPS is responsible for securing and maintaining public confidence in the public complaint system. So essentially, if the public make a complaint, well, it's not always the public. It can be internal complaints, which is kind of weird because technically you can't actually complain about another officer, which is just stupid in itself. Yeah, even though people have tried to call me out about that, but it's not. The truth is, police officers can't complain about other police officers. They can simply submit a form of wrongdoing. Does it work? I mean, it probably works for some people, but it don't work for most people. I ain't even gonna say why. You could probably guess why it don't work. But yes, the Directorate of Professional Standards. That's the explanation from the Met Police website. They are the ones that investigate other officers. So if you get an external complaint, someone rings up and says, this police officer punched me or whatever, then it gets sent to them as a complaint, and they will do the initial. I mean, they'll sort of vet it, they'll look at it, and they'll deem whether it is gross misconduct, because they only deal with gross misconduct. That's the stuff you can get fired for. Then you've got the guys underneath them, the professional standards unit, who used to be separate, and they used to be localized. So there'll be a professional standards unit in each area as such, so each borough will have their own one, and they used to be able to sort of liaise better with the officers, and they will talk to you face to face, and it'll be a lot easier to access them because they're just in the room. The DPS, you can't access the DPS. The DPS don't answer your phone calls, they don't return your emails. They like, unless you've got something on them and they're like, oh snap, then they're not responding to you. So yeah, communication lines between them is horrible at best. How do most officers feel? Or I'll speak for myself. The DPS, there were horror stories, urban legends about the DPS when you first join. You get told, you don't want to get tangled with them, blah, 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 blah. All of them are pretty much true. So any officer that's pretty new and people have been told stuff about DPS, just take it as yeah, it's true. It's true. The average investigation lasts around approximately, and this was as of, I don't know, maybe last year, from Baroness Casey's review, it's 400 days. The average. I've known of investigations that have lasted 3 years. 3 years. Over 900 days. And if you're being investigated by the DPS, it's going to be gross misconduct, which means that you're probably going to have some sort of restrictions, so you won't be doing your normal job. So you'll be restricted from your normal job. And if you specialize, i.e., I don't know, you're in firearms, they will take your gun. They'll be like, nah, you can't hold this gun while you're being investigated, regardless of the allegation. So the allegation won't have much of a bearing on whether you get restricted or not. They don't care. It could be you stole a Jaffa cake, you're still not holding that gun. So what are they meant to do? We know they're supposed to investigate any and keep the confidence of the public office. Well, to the public office. Where am I getting that from? To the public. So just to basically, so you understand the public have, confidence that the police are actually marking their own work correctly. I don't know how that happens when we don't actually know. They have not got anyone really overseeing them. So their decisions, you've got the IOPC, I don't think they're called that anymore, but everyone knows what they are. It's an external body which look at decisions and they get referred stuff. So the Met Police will refer incidents to them, but they don't get referred every single one. So there could be a whole bunch of stuff which is like wrong, slipping through nets. And I know of a specific case that the IOPC probably should have known about and should have been referred about, and they weren't, or haven't as of yet, should I say. Because there's always time for people to change, believe in that. So there's what they're meant to do, and then there's what we see them do. And we, I mean the royal we, I say as police officers, and I'll speak for myself, then speak for anyone else. What I see the DPS do, I see the DPS pretty much in large doing what they're kind of supposed to be doing and a little bit more. So yes, do they investigate officers? Yes. Do they investigate gross misconduct? Yes. The issue, okay, here's the question. What is the issue that people have with them? Why is there so much fear-mongering? Well, initially because no one really wants to be in trouble. Of course not. No one wants to be in trouble. Like, it's like being at school and then getting not even told off. It's like the headmaster. He has to have talk to you and bring your mum in. That kind of stuff. So no one really likes being in trouble historically. But the issue that most officers, including myself, would probably say, and I will say it for myself, is that the disproportionality in the investigation, the fact that the investigations take on average 400 days, as per Baroness Casey, the fact that there are known cases which have taken over 900 days, I'm talking about 3 years, to come to a conclusion. The fact that so let me give you a scenario or an example of what the DPS can do and do. So you will have a complaint. Let's just say we use me as an example. Dave has complained. Dave is a person that's not in the police. Has complained that I smacked him in the face on Tuesday. And he's made the complaint, it's gone up to the DPS. The DPS said, all right, cool, fair enough, we'll look into this. So what they'll do is any normal investigation. So they'll exhaust all lines of inquiry. So they'll look for CCTV, they'll look for witnesses, they'll speak to, let me pause that. They will speak to the victim. Whether they speak to me is down to them. They have the final say on whether they speak to the suspect, which in any normal situation, i.e. in any criminal investigation, the suspect has got to be spoken. You have to speak to them. If you get arrested, you have to be interviewed. That is it's your right to be interviewed, because you have to be able to say your say. And you're not going to be able to interview someone. You're not going to be able to charge someone and take them to court if you haven't interviewed them. You can decline being interviewed. That's a different story. But the Metropolitan Police aren't allowed to say, I'm not interviewing you, unless there's some special exception, which there may be. But I don't know. It's not in common practice. Let's put it that way. So, yes. So what the issue, one of the main issues with the DPS is that you can have an allegation against you, i.e. Dom smacked Dave, and out on the street on Tuesday outside Box Park, and no one saw it. It was at 2 a.m. No one was there. No one saw anything. There's no evidence of it happening. There's no videos, no CCTV, no additional witnesses, nothing. It's just an allegation. Yeah, and that's all the evidence that you have. You would think, so, okay, let me explain to you. As a police officer, if I was investigating that as a crime, I would be like, well, I've exhausted all my options. I've got no evidence of this actually happening. You haven't even got video. You haven't got pictures of it. I can just take your allegation. I can still arrest the person and speak to them and interview them as such. I can do that. But if in the interview they don't give me any additional lines of inquiry, i.e. they don't say, yeah, actually, I was there, but I didn't smack him, and here's a video of me not smacking him. Like, there's not much I can really do with just an allegation. That's why proving stuff is so difficult as a police officer. You need a lot of help. The DPS don't actually operate in that way, which is quite strange, you might say. You might say, well, why wouldn't they speak to the suspect if they can? And the answer to that is, I don't know. And I don't think many people know. And I think it's one of those situations where the DPS will have to come out and show some transparency and explain themselves. Because I'm sure in the regulations it clearly states that they don't necessarily have to interview you. But it would be good practice too, especially if you're making an allegation against someone, no? And what normally happens is gross misconduct isn't always a criminal allegation. So although I said use the example of smack someone, gross misconduct could be someone falsifying the times that they're actually at work. So that would be honesty and integrity. So that's an example of something that's gross misconduct that the DPS will deal with, but isn't a crime as such. The Met might say, oh, you've defrauded us, as they like to do all of that. Let's just throw it out there. But the reality is, no, they just lied. So maybe the lie was that they said they were in work at a specific place, but they were working from somewhere else. Do you get what I'm saying? So they were still working, so they weren't stealing money, but they were actually not where they were supposed to be. So they were lying. Why they were lying, who knows? Whatever reason. And this is actually a common one, actually, in the sense that I've read up about these kind of scenarios happening quite more than once. So the DPS will investigate and they'll be like, all right, cool. They may take your laptop, your work laptop, that is, and such, but they don't have the power to arrest you for it. If it's not an arrestable offence or criminal offence, they can't arrest you and take your stuff. They can't do it. They can ask you for it, but they can't just take it from you because they have no power to seize anything, from my understanding. So what you would expect, and most people probably expect, is that, oh, okay, cool. They're just going to go chat to that guy, and if they can prove that he's done it, then they can prove that he's done it. You know, you'll need evidence. No. So you don't need evidence for gross misconduct in the Metropolitan Police. And this is where it becomes really, 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 really sticky. And this is where police officers really dislike the DPS, because the proof is, so in criminal law, it would be beyond reasonable doubt. You'll have a jury of how many people that be like, yeah, he did it, or no, he didn't, or I'm unsure. Inside the Metropolitan Police internally, you would think also they would operate like, oh yeah, well, you know, we're police, we need evidence. That would be a good way to just do all things and do all investigations. No. That is not how it is for the police. Unfortunately, for every single officer everywhere, they can literally just, what they do is the balance of probability. And for anyone that doesn't understand that term, that means is there a possibility that what this person is saying that this person done, what Dave is saying that Dom did, could it have happened? Yes, that's it. Could it have happened? That's it. And they do not need to prove anything other than could it have happened? The saving grace, because people will be like, wait, what? You could possibly do that for any and everything. Yes, it happens. You do get a lot of malicious allegations. Malicious, farcical ones. Like, I know a very fantastic one right now that I'm not going to mention because it's being investigated now. Is it criminal? Can't remember. Probably should be criminal, but I don't think it is. So yes, so you can have allegations made like from officers and to officers, well, essentially complaining about each other, which are malicious, and the DPS will ignore the normal process of, shall we get some evidence? And what they can do is they can do this. They can go, well, you give me all the information you have about this person doing it, whether it's true or not. And they will go, we will push this all the way to the nth degree, and we'll take them to a gross misconduct hearing. And wild, I know. It's the equivalent of Dave saying I smacked him, the police going, I'm not going to interview you, can't be bothered, because if I interview you, you might actually give a legitimate reason or an excuse, or like, where were you, Dom? On Tuesday, I was in Jamaica. Can you prove it? Yeah. They don't want to hear that, unfortunately. The DPS, for some strange reason, that's how it comes across. They do not want to hear the truth. So what they can do is just say, I'm not interviewing the suspect. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take all this information. I'm going to use an example from one of my good friends, it's like in America where they just make up a scenario which fits the allegation. It doesn't have to remotely be true. Like, you will see in American courts where they just come up with this fantastic story of how this person came to being, like how Dave came to be smacked in the face, ignoring all facts. They don't need facts. Facts don't matter, and that's how it works with the DPS. Facts don't necessarily matter with them in the investigation stage. All that matters is the information presented to them by the victim. And what they can do with that is just take it to the nth degree, take it to a gross misconduct hearing, which may take up to 300, well, on average 400 days, but it's not uncommon to hear 900 days. And then they go to a hearing, and that will be the very first time an officer gets to defend themselves. And just imagine that happening to you. Just imagine the police just coming to your house saying someone said that you've done something and just taking you straight to trial. But you don't go to trial immediately. You just get left in this limbo where it's like, you're going to go to trial, but I haven't got a date yet. So you wait 900 days. And while you're waiting those 900 days, you can't go to work. You can't work normally. You can't do any stuff. And then eventually you get to trial. And they ask you the questions that they should have probably asked you in the beginning, like, where were you on Tuesday, Dom? And I'm like, I was in Jamaica. Here's my ticket. Here's videos of me in Jamaica. Here's the geolocation. Here's all the data on my phone showing that I was there. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, well, no case to answer. And that's why a lot of people don't like the DPS, because they will run these investigations, not do it properly from our perspective, and then at the end, they will not say sorry. I'm laughing, but it's not funny. They don't say sorry and they're not held accountable. So if they do that to someone, it's just like, yeah, on to the next one. We'll get the next one. It's fine. So yes, some of the tactics in which they can employ, I briefly touched upon this. They can just do normal investigations. They're not allowed to seize property. What they can do is if the allegation is criminal, and I've heard these kind of things before, and I'll just be honest with you, I believe that there are instances in which the DPS will actually, let me rephrase what I'm saying. I know that there are circumstances to which the DPS will push for a criminal investigation so that they can simply get evidence they can't get any other way because they don't have the power to seize. So what they will do is they may prompt, they may look for offences where there aren't any, called phishing, and they will get that person arrested for that farcical reason, whatever it may be, and then it gives them the power to take any evidence taken in the criminal one. That's what they can do. So if you get arrested and you're a police officer, the DPS can take anything that you get arrested, any evidence used there, they can take that. And they will definitely take it. Your stuff will just go miss. Like if it's your phone, they do love a phone. That's another thing that police officers don't like. And there was quite a big uproar about this in the media, in which the public was saying, police officers' phones need to be monitored. And it's like, well, actually, European human rights clearly states that I have a right to a private life. So no, I don't think I will, my Peliwi chum. But the problem the DPS have is that they want access to phones, because what they can do, and what I've seen firsthand, is that they will go, okay, I cannot find any evidence of him doing what's been alleged. But what I can do is if I get into his phone, I can look through his phone and look to see if there's anything there that I can discipline him for. That is a whole thing. And it's a common practice that's happening now more recently, seeing as there's this crackdown on all these dirty officers. What you're finding, and it's for all to see, what you're finding in the newspapers is that there are a lot of WhatsApp conversations that are suddenly being brought to light, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, this is horrendous. I don't doubt that some of the stuff, or most or all of the stuff that have been presented are horrendous. The question people should be asking is, how are they getting access to these people's phones? Because then a lot of these people aren't going to prison. If you go onto the Met's website, they will show you the disciplinaries and the dismissals, and you can see the investigations. You can read into the misconduct hearings, and there you will find how the access to the phones have been granted. And yes, I understand some people are horrible people and they've done horrible things, and a lot of people deserve to go to prison. But what I'm also saying is people have a right to a private life. And the question has to be posed to people in certain circumstances: would you like your boss to go through your phone and look for anything that is remotely bad? Forget your boss, just the police. Would you hand over your WhatsApp to the police? Mad, innit? So yeah, most people will probably say no. And what you've got to remember is the police officers are held to a different regard, and it may not feel like it, and I understand that, but they're held to a high level of accountability. So if there's stuff in people's phones which some people may consider dark humour, the Metropolitan Police can just be like, we don't like that, bye. So yeah, it is a big deal right now what they're doing, and my personal view on the accessing and taking of phones, to me, it's malicious, because what you'll find is those people will be alleged to have done something criminally, and that just sort of just disappears into the ether. It's just like, oh yeah, that got NFA'd ages ago, but we got his phone, or we got her phone, and we've downloaded her phone, and we're trawling through all these conversations. A really good one to look at is actually, I won't give that example. But if you, there are some in the media, because there's one that's just reopened, so to talk about it wouldn't be appropriate. But yes, I feel like I've covered everything. Let's go through our checklist. What do the DPS do? What we see them do, which is basically just go hunting. Who they answer to, I've touched on that. Absolutely no one. They do have a boss, and the IOPC, but they will self-refer to the IOPC. So as individual, if you report to the IOPC, you will see on the website, so I'm not making this up, it will say to you, if I'm a police officer and I report it, or you're a person you report to the IOPC, they will first and foremost send it to the police, that local police, and they will investigate first, and then the IOPC will come in after if necessary. And I don't understand what the threshold is for that. The amalgamation of the PSU, which I said is a horrible idea. And what they've done is they've just taken away all the local officers that used to work and do the lower stuff. So it's like, oh, someone's made a mistake, we need to reprimand them to an extent. They're not going to get fired for it. All of those officers that you could just go in and talk to, they've all been taken, and now they're all together with the DPS. So it's a bit wild. And to touch on another thing, the DPS are the ones that liaise with your federation representative, and they are normally quite close in the sense that they work with each other a lot, so they're going to have a working relationship. And this is why I often say you should pick your federate very wisely. You need to know who they know and who are their friends. And if you don't know how to do that, you need to find a way, because you can become unstuck from the decisions made by your federate. Not that I'm sitting there trashing on the federation, but it is what it is. The lack of interviewing, been over that. There will be cases where people are not interviewed. I know a very, very high profile one. I may attach the link to which the officer was not interviewed, and when it was all complete, they were found to have not done anything wrong, being a very credible officer, and there was a lot of discrepancies with the evidence presented. And if they had just spoken to the officer, they probably would never have had to do a misconduct meeting or a misconduct hearing. Oh, last thing, locally qualified chairs. They're called LQC, legally qualified chairs. And what they are, I've touched upon this in the other video for misconduct for the hearings. Legally qualified chairs are the ones that I feel they're the ones that give me a sense of hope. That's what they do. They give, and I don't know about other officers, and I would tell other officers, trust me, I've seen them in action, not all obviously, but I've seen them, and they are very, very fair. They are fair. So they'll tell you if you've been dumb, they'll be like, yo, you made a mistake, that was silly. But they're also like, you're human. So they're like, yeah, the rules are this, but you didn't do that maliciously. So instead of firing you, we're just going to give you a written warning. And they're the ones, there's two of them normally on the panel, with one chief officer, chief superintendent, or whatever rank. And yeah, they are the savior of the police officers, but unfortunately what you found now, for some strange reason, the commissioner has stated that he doesn't have enough power, and he wants to be able to just sort of sidestep the locally qualified chairs. And that can never be a good thing, because he feels as though that, and don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. He stated that he believes that the percentage of officers being dismissed has been lowered because the locally qualified chairs have been making decisions. But that's then he's saying that they don't make the right decision. And it's like, well, who are you to say that? Are you there in every single one? I don't think so. And then on top of that, when you looked at the Metropolitan Police prior to locally qualified chairs, what you found is the reason they were brought in because it was considered a kangaroo court where it was just down to popularity, and the chief officer or whatever, the appropriate authority was just like, well, if they didn't like you, you were effed in the A, so you were getting fired. That was it. It didn't matter about evidence. So yes, so unfortunately that has been brought in, to which, and what happens is you just get fired. They just go, you're fired. So you may read, this officer's been fired. Oh my gosh, this is wild. And they'll write to you, they'll write down everything that they think or allege them to have done. That doesn't mean they've done it. It just means that they've just sidestepped the legally qualified chairs, kicked them out themselves via an accelerated hearing, which is for the worst of the worst until they don't want it to be. And now you're reading it and going, oh my God, he touched kids. And then it's like, oh, well, why didn't I see this in the news? And it's because they've been NFA'd for touching kids. And now the police just go, well, we don't want you anyway. We don't care if you did or you didn't. We don't want you. And they'll just fire you that way. And now you've been smeared with you touch kids, even if you completely didn't. And you've been vindicated and it's like, no further action. They're like, well, we don't care. So it's a very dangerous place to be a police officer right now. Even more so dangerous place if you're a black police officer. Because I'll end on this. This is nearly half an hour. I don't know how I've got this long. This is nearly half an hour. The reason that it's a bad thing if you're a black police officer, because if you've seen the numbers, also Asian, but the numbers for black police officer was 81% more likely to be investigated misconduct, gross misconduct. So 81% more likely. Considering that black officers only make up 3%, which is roughly like 1,500 or something like that of the Metropolitan Police. Remember, that's spread across all different facets. So you're thinking 1,500, oh yeah, that's a lot. No, it's not. Divided across all of the BCUs, the boroughs, divided across all the different teams within those boroughs, and then you've got A, B, C, and D normally of those teams. And it's probably, maybe you'll have 5 or 6 per borough. You won't see them on necessarily frontline policing. And it's so bad because that means it will disproportionately affect us as well. So what you find is the more black people are going to be encountering the DPS, and they're going to be getting the rough end of the stick because they're going to be like, well, they may get that accelerated hearing. Bye-bye. Doesn't matter whether you've done it or not. So you're more likely to be in that position if you're black, which is wild when you really think about it. But yeah, I'll end it there. I won't go too deep anymore on that. We'll do another poll and see what you lot want to talk about. Stop and search is a good one. But I'll let you lot choose. Won't try and sway your decision. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope it wasn't too long for you. I know it dragged out. We're nearly at half an hour now. So apologies if it dragged. But it's kind of a topic that you can talk about all day on. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. I want to end once again, officers' welfare. If you're being investigated, if you're struggling at work, if you're just sad, you've got no one to talk to, shout me, just send me a message. And as always, I can't exactly pause the zombies for you, but what I can do is probably talk to you simultaneously. I've got the AirPods, so I put one in there and I put the headphones over. And you can just hear me shooting zombies, we can chat rubbish. But yeah, if you need any advice, as I say, disclaimer, I'm not a Fed rep, but if you need one, I can point you towards very good ones. Yeah, we'll call it a day. Thank you very much. Peace out, guys.